In a high school where popularity was currency, Leo was invisible. He was the kid from the wrong side of the tracks, the one with second-hand clothes and a quiet determination that most mistook for shine. His days were a predictable loop of avoiding the condescending glares of the wealthy students and finding solace in the dusty corners of the library. The school was a kingdom ruled by Jake, the star quarterback, whose family name was practically etched into the school's cornerstone. Jake was charming, rich, and effortlessly popular everything. Leo wasn't. One morning, an announcement echoed through the hallways. Nominations for student body president were open. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Jake would run. It was his birthright, a stepping stone to the Ivy League future his father had planned for him. As expected, Jake's name was the first one on the nomination board, met with cheers and applause. Then, something unexpected happened. A quiet, steady hand wrote a new name on the board. Leo Washington. A hush fell over the hallway, quickly replaced by snickers and outright laughter. Leo. The charity case. Someone whispered loudly. Jake and his friends looked over, their faces a mixture of amusement and disbelief. Jake smirked, walking over to Leo and clapping him on the shoulder with mock camaraderie. "Hey man, good for you," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's good to have, diversity in the race." The laughter grew louder. Leo's face burned, but he stood his ground, his eyes fixed on his own name. He didn't say a word. He just nodded and walked away, the sound of their ridicule following him down the hall. That evening, Leo went home, not to a mansion, but to a small, cramped apartment he shared with his grandmother. She was the one who had raised him, instilling in him a quiet strength and an unwavering belief in doing the right thing. He told her what happened, expecting sympathy. Instead, she looked at him with a fiery glint in her eyes. "They laughed?" she asked. "Good. Let them laugh. Now, what are you going to do about it?" That night, Leo didn't sleep. He thought about the broken water fountains that never got fixed, the outdated textbooks, and the after-school programs that were always the first to be cut. He thought about the students like him, the ones who were overlooked and underserved. For them, school wasn't about pep rallies and proms. It was about getting through another day. Jake's campaign was all about more school spirit and bigger parties. Leo knew the school needed more than that. It needed real change. His campaign began with zero budget and zero supporters, aside from his best friend, Maria, a brilliant but equally overlooked student who ran the school's debate club. "Are you sure about this, Leo?" she asked, her brow furrowed with worry. "They're going to tear you apart." Leo just looked at her and said, "Then let them try." While Jake's campaign was a spectacle of glossy posters, free pizza, and charismatic speeches in the auditorium, Leo's was a grassroots movement. He didn't have money for posters, so he and Maria used recycled cardboard and markers to create handwritten signs with messages like, "Your voice matters in real issues, real solutions." They didn't stand in the spotlight. They went to the students. Leo spent his lunch breaks not on a stage, but sitting with the quiet kids, the art club members, the band geeks, asking them a simple question. "What do you want to change?" At first, people were hesitant. They were used to being ignored, but Leo listened. He truly listened. He took notes in a small, worn-out notebook. He heard about the lack of resources for the science club, the need for better mental health support, and the desire for a student-run tutoring program. He wasn't making grand promises. He was creating a platform built from the hushed wishes of the student body. The first school-wide debate was supposed to be Jake's coronation. He stood at the podium, polished and confident, rattling off cliches about tradition and pride. The crowd cheered on cue. Then it was Leo's turn. He walked to the podium, no flashy suit, just his clean but worn clothes. The snickers started again, but they died down as he began to speak. He didn't use a booming voice. He spoke calmly, directly. He didn't talk about parties. He talked about the leaking roof in the library. He talked about Maya, a sophomore who had to drop out of the robotics club because she couldn't afford the fees. He talked about the need for a safe space for students to talk about their problems without judgment. He wasn't just giving a speech, he was telling their stories. For the first time, The student body wasn't just hearing a candidate. They were seeing themselves. A subtle shift began to occur. The handwritten cardboard signs started appearing in more and more lockers. Students began volunteering to help Leo, passing out flyers they'd printed themselves. The invisible students started to become a visible force. Jake and his crew noticed the amusement on their faces was replaced by annoyance, and then by a flicker of panic. They decided to fight dirty. Rumors started to spread that Leo was only running to get a scholarship. They defaced his posters, scrawling cruel words over his messages of hope. In the final debate, Jake went for the jugular. "How can someone who can barely afford lunch lead our school?" he asked, his voice full of false concern. "We need a president who understands success, not someone who represents struggle." The insult hung in the air, sharp and ugly. The auditorium was silent. Leo looked at Jake, then at the crowd. He took a deep breath. "You're right, Jake," he said, his voice steady. "I do know struggle. I know what it's like to worry about bills. I know what it's like to feel invisible. But you know what else that teaches you? It teaches you to listen. It teaches you to care about people, not just about winning. I'm not running to be your king. I'm running to be your voice. All of your voices." A wave of applause, genuine and powerful, erupted from every corner of the auditorium. It wasn't just from his supporters anymore. It was from everyone. Election day arrived. The atmosphere was tense. Jake and his friends were smugly confident, laughing by the ballot boxers. Leo and Maria stood quietly to the side, watching as student after student cast their vote. The day dragged on, the suspense building with every passing hour. Finally, the time came for the results. The principal stood on the stage in the gymnasium, a sealed envelope in her hand. The entire school was packed inside, a sea of anxious faces. "The results are in," she announced. She cleared her throat. "Your new student body president, with a majority of 62% of the vote, is..." She paused, and for a heart-stopping moment, the world seemed to freeze. Leo Washington. For a second, there was stunned silence. Then, the gymnasium exploded. It wasn't just a cheer. It was a roar. It was the sound of the invisible becoming visible, the sound of the unheard finally being heard. Leo stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. Maria grabbed his arm, tears of joy streaming down her face. Across the gym, Jake's face was a mask of pure shock, his perfect world crumbling around him. The students who had once laughed at Leo were now on their feet, applauding him. They weren't just clapping for a winner. They were clapping for the possibility that someone like them, someone real, could actually win. As Leo walked to the stage, the crowd parted for him. He wasn't just a poor kid anymore. He was their president. He took the microphone, looked out at the faces of his peers, and for the first time, he didn't feel invisible. Ifelchin. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Now, let's get to work." Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content that inspires. See you next time.